Hello. I've received a message from one of my subscribers asking if I can do a video exploring how to know if somebody needs to be assessed and how to go about getting that assessment. So let's dive straight in. Often when I'm asked the question, how do I know if somebody needs assessing? What they're really saying is, I'm concerned about somebody, do they need assessing? Now, I'm a big believer in the niggle. You know, that little gut feeling that says, actually, I'm really concerned about this person. So I would always say, if you've got the niggle, get somebody assessed. Because it's better to be on the safe side than to let it roll on and then suddenly find yourself in a situation where something goes wrong and you go, oh, I wish I'd acted then. I wish I'd done that back then. So what causes that niggle? Well, more often than not, it's because the person that you're concerned about is making a decision that you either don't agree with, or that is one that in the past they wouldn't have made, or they're doing something risky. And this often comes from a change in their presentation. Now, when I talk about change in presentation, I'm talking about the way they act. And it's this change in presentation that gives us that niggle, gives us that worry, makes us concerned that the decision that they're making may not be one that they're capable of making. So what is it that we're looking for? And I will cover this in a bit more detail in a later video. But for the purpose of this video, let's think about what the Mental Capacity Act tells us is an indicator that there may be a lack of capacity. So in the Mental Capacity Act, we have something called the two-stage test. The bit that you want to be aware of is something that we call the functional stage. And if you look at the Act, it's the last bit of the two-stage test. But in reality, it's the bit that you want to start with because it's just easiest. And this bit of the test says, look, in order to make a decision, somebody needs to be able to do four things, right? They need to, one, be able to understand relevant information. And that relevant is a key word there. Two, they need to be able to retain that relevant information. Three, they need to be able to weigh it up and use it. And four, they need to be able to communicate it back. And the Act also tells us that if they're not able to do just one of those things, then there's a lack of capacity. So if we're thinking, when do I need to get a person assessed? And we have that niggle, we need to drill it down to, do I think they're not understanding the relevant information? Do I think they're not being able to retain that information? Am I worried that they can't weigh up and use that information? Is there something that is preventing them from being able to communicate their decision or their decision process with me? So they're the four things we're looking at. And I said just a moment ago that the key word there was relevant, because something that the Mental Capacity Act tells us is that it needs to be relevant information. Now, the reason for that is because mental capacity is decision specific. And what that means is that a person might have capacity to make one decision, such as what to have for breakfast, but they might not be able to make a more complex decision, such as can I have contact with this person? And the reason that it's decision specific is because of something called the threshold of understanding. So what do I need to understand to make this specific decision, right? So what I would need to understand to decide what I want for breakfast is very different to what I'd need to understand to make a decision about where to live or who to have contact with. And it's that, what we call the threshold of understanding, that sets out the relevant information that a person needs to be able to understand, retain, weigh up and communicate. Now, there's a lot more that the Act tells us around how long you'll be able to remember it for, whether someone's making a wise or an unwise decision, all this sort of thing. And I will cover that in a different video. But I think it's sufficient to say that if you have a niggle, a concern, a worry, that the person you are engaging with can't understand relevant information, can't remember that relevant information, can't weigh it up or apply it or communicate it back, then that's at the point you want to start thinking about getting an assessment. Certainly if they are putting themselves at risk. So they are making decisions around maybe giving money to people or seeing nefarious individuals. You might think that, okay, my gran, her memory is fading a little bit. She can't remember these things. She's not putting herself in danger. Yeah, she might suddenly decide she loves Britney Spears, whereas before she's always been a nailed on Beethoven woman. And those sorts of things, you might go, well, okay, look, it's not harming anyone. There's no danger to her. So I won't put her through the experience of having an assessment. Now, the other part of the question from Alex was, how do we go about getting an assessment and organising an assessment? Well, there were two routes, certainly in the UK, to how we might go about this. So we had the route where we go private, right? We say, actually, I need to get an assessment done and I'm just going to pay for it. And that's easy enough to sort. You can Google mental capacity assessors. There'll be lots of people coming up, lots of companies. I would advise that you pick 2 or 3, get in touch, have a chat with them, talk and ask them about their process, about what they do, and get a feeling within yourself as to whether actually, these are people I think I could trust, these are people I think I could work with. So that's, I suppose, the most straightforward route. The other route is to use local authority. Now, this is free. The downside, I suppose, if there is a downside, is that quite often it can take longer. So as we know, our public services are quite stretched. And certainly if the person you're worried about isn't already connected with social services or with a mental health team or, some sort of community service body, then it's going to take a lot longer for you to get an assessment done. But the way you would go about it is you would contact your local team. So quite often people will contact the local social work team, or you might go to your GP and say, look, I'm worried about my nan, about my dad, about whoever it might be, and ask them if they can arrange an assessment. So they're the two routes that you go down. Now, where that leads obviously depend on the finding. And if a person lacks capacity, it's then about appointing somebody to be able to make those decisions on their behalf. If they do have capacity, then we need to let them make those decisions, even if they're decisions that we don't agree with. So that's the next step after you've instructed the assessment. But look, I hope that's been helpful. I hope that's been useful. I hope that's given you a very high level kind of what to look for if you've got the niggle and how to initiate it. In my upcoming videos, I will delve a lot deeper into the mental capacity. We'll talk about things like the 5 principles. We'll look deeper at that 2-stage test. We'll look about what it means to understand, what it really means in terms of weighing up. We'll look at how we can balance unwise decisions, all these sorts of things. So if you have any more questions, if you've got anything else you'd like me to talk about, then please do let me know. Please do hit the subscribe button or the like button. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks very much.